Once you're done editing your images, you may want to export them for sharing online. Sharing to the internet or attaching to an email is a pretty common requirement. Now, there are different ways to go about this, but let me show you a few general practices. You'll frequently find the ability to size an image under the Export menu. I can choose File, Export. You'll want to pick a destination as well as give your image a name. In this case, I'm going to choose to sharpen a little bit on Export. You can decide to export with the original dimensions or enter a new dimension, specifying the long or short edge. In this case, with a landscape-oriented image where it's wider, I'll just choose the long edge and enter a target size of 1200 pixels for the web browser. This will give an image that will fill up most web browsers, but is not the high-resolution image of the original. Next, choose a color space. While Adobe RGB and ProPhoto RGB are frequently used for editing, sRGB is the most common image type. This will ensure the broadest compatibility with different types of web browsers and consumer electronic devices. Specify a file format. JPEG is going to be most common. It's a good balance of file size and image quality. However, you can also use a PNG graphic if you need to export for certain types of use online. These other formats are not as good. GIF is going to be reduced colors, and the others are really designed for printing or future editing. I'll stick with JPEG. Feel free to adjust the quality slider. While low quality will get the file size down, chances are you're going to want to favor something that's about 75% to the right here. You may not need to go maximum quality, but rather back that off a few steps. Let's make sure we have the correct file extension of .jpg for the JPEG. And I can click Save to write the file. That'll put the file in my folder. Additionally, if you need to send a file via email, that's pretty simple too. You'll find from the File menu, you can also choose Share To. Simply choose your mail application, and this will correctly size the image and attach it to an email. You'll note that it attaches the image at a high quality. However, on the right here, you can easily adjust the file size. Instead of sending a 46 megabyte attachment, I can drop that to large, and it goes down significantly to 3.6 megabytes. Now, I can address this and send it. And feel free to give it a subject. When ready, click the Send button. Saving images for the web is really pretty straightforward. It just comes down to sizing the image down to a reasonable size so it works on web browsers and devices. It's also a very good idea to change the color space to sRGB to ensure the broadest compatibility with different hardware and software options. And I recommend sticking with a JPEG file to ensure the broadest compatibility and smallest file size. Another option you might explore is sharing your images online. Now, there are some general considerations here that I'd like to recommend. First up, make sure that the images you share online are images that you have the rights to. These should be images that you yourself took. And if there are any people or recognizable objects, you might want to consider having a model release form or a location release form. Now, many of you will be able to easily share your images because you're not trying to monetize your photos. But these additional documents may become necessary if you look to monetize your photographs online. I also recommend that you take the time to prepare the image so it's ready to share online. One thing you might consider is applying a crop. Let's go ahead and crop this image. Now, you can assign an aspect ratio. For example, if I'm targeting online sharing, I often crop to a 16:9 aspect ratio, which matches many devices. You can freely position the image within the crop, and when ready, click Apply, or if it's an option, you can tap it in the touch bar. Now, the image is cropped to the new target size. You can use the instructions you just learned to easily export a new image. However, you'll also find that certain sites are available here in the Share To menu. For example, I can choose to share directly to social media. Let's attach this image to a tweet. The image is optimized, and you could choose which account you're going to post to. When I click Post, the image is attached and a new post is generated on the social network. You'll notice that the image is shared to your timeline. There's similar functionality for sharing to Facebook. I could choose who's allowed to see this. For example, choosing from different lists that I've set up. I'm going to limit this one just to friends. And I could decide where it goes. For example, you could decide to add it directly to a specific photo album. But I'm just going to post this directly to my timeline. When ready, I can click the Post button. It'll generate a new status update. And you'll see it added to your page. You also will find additional third-party services available. For example, Luminar has the ability to post to Flickr, a popular photo sharing site, SmugMug, which is a site that allows you to feature your gallery as well as sell images to clients, and 500px, another photo community. Let's do a quick share there. Once logged in, you can give the image a title and a description. Feel free to assign a category, as well as set the status to public or private. When ready, click the Upload button. The image will then appear on your profile page. You can track feedback from members in the 500px community. You can receive views and comments, as well as see how people liked your photo. Feel free on the page itself to edit the photo if you'd like to add additional information, such as its exact location or any other details about the shoot. Sharing your images online is a great part of your photographic journey. It allows you to share memories with friends and family. Plus, as a photographer, you can get feedback, whether it's from those friends and family or by belonging to a community like 500px or Flickr. This will allow you potential growth as you can receive critiques on your photos and start to explore other people's pictures, which can serve as a source of inspiration. As you get ready to prepare an image for print, there are a few things to keep in mind. In a moment, we'll tackle how to print at home, and then we'll talk about sending an image out for printing. But first, let's go over a few things about preparing the image itself. I suggest that you make sure that the image is sized correctly. From the File menu, you can choose to set up the page size. I'll choose Page Setup. Here, you can specify a particular size. You'll notice here that you have options for any printer, and you can choose from common sizes available. Additionally, if you intend to print on your own, or you've been given a profile by a printing company, you can choose that printer from the format options. Now, you can specify a particular size. In this case, I'm going to be printing this here on the attached printer in a moment, and I'll go with the postcard size, but borderless. When I click OK, that image is going to print at that size. Additionally, you can invoke the crop command. Here, you can decide to crop to a specific size. I know that the paper I'm using is 6 inches by 4 inches, so I can set this to a 3:2 aspect ratio. Now, as I crop the image, it's going to constrain it to the dimensions of my output. Let's place our subject using the rule of thirds here, but I want to avoid cutting off his elbow. That looks good. I can loosen up that image just a little. And when ready, click Apply. Now, the image has the correct setup and crop. Now, depending upon what software tools you use, you can also take advantage of other features. For example, you might need to set the color bit depth. 16 bits is a good idea for printing. And you might want to check the color space. Most consumer printers that you print at home are going to use RGB. If you're sending to a professional printer, many folks still choose to send RGB and allow the printer to do the CMYK conversion. We're going to be working with Luminar here, so I'll let it handle the conversion under the hood. Now, in this case, it looks like the image is just about set. I'm going to save off a print-ready image that I can send off a little bit later. I'll choose File, Export. And in this case, let's give it a descriptive name. While you can print JPEGs, it's a much better idea to go with a professional format. The PDF format is very efficient with file size and popular with many printers. But I prefer to work with TIFF, which is a higher quality file. Here, you'll notice the ability to go to a 16-bit file. If you shot RAW, chances are it started as a 10, 12, or even 14-bit image. Luminar has the ability to work with 16-bit images, so saving to a 16-bit TIFF file is a good idea. This will give you the maximum detail in the exposure and color. From the color space, I'm going to choose Adobe RGB, which most professional printers can support. I've got the format set as TIFF and the compression set to none. Let's assign a print resolution of 300 pixels per inch, which is plenty for print resolution. And I could apply mild sharpening if needed, but I've already done that, so I'll set it to none. And we'll choose to export with the original size, so no additional shrinking occurs. When I click Save, a high-quality file is written to my folder. Now that you understand what types of files are best for printing, as well as how to save a print resolution image, let's move on to printing at home. Many users choose to print at home. This lets you make prints whenever you need them, making it easy to share with family and loved ones, or even if you're selling your images, to have what you need right away to give to the client. When it comes to printing, I recommend that you don't rush to print. Rather, print a single image or do a test with an image before you fire off several copies. Let's explore a few other things. Within the image, make sure that you're satisfied with the image itself. It's a good idea to invoke cropping so you know the target output size. I'm going to be printing to a 4:6 photo printer, so I've cropped to a 3:2 aspect ratio. You'll notice that Luminar supports the rule of thirds, or you can go with the golden ratio. Both are similar and can help you with the positioning of objects when you crop. I'll click Apply. You also may decide to apply some sharpening. Feel free to click the plus symbol, scroll down, and choose Sharpening. This will allow you to sharpen the image. It's a very good idea to zoom into 100%. This way you can check details in the image. Feel free to first bring up the amount. If you go too far, though, you'll see problems. You can adjust the radius and the masking. You'll notice with low masking and a high amount in radius, the sharpening is a bit aggressive. Let's back that off a little bit and reduce the intensity while also applying a mask. I like the detail coming through. We have a little blur at the edge, but the sharpening is quite effective here. I'll place that at the very end of my image chain. This way it's the last thing done to the image. Now, it's a good idea to choose File, Page Setup. Make sure you select your printer from the attached menu here so you can format. Then, feel free to choose the paper size. There are different options loaded depending upon your country as well as what paper you've bought. I'm going to use a postcard here. Now, in this particular case, I'll assign the orientation. This is a landscape image. Let's click OK. Now, I can choose File, Print. From the Print dialog, you'll get a preview and the ability to check a few options. I see the orientation on the page. The printer is selected, but you can choose from other printers on your network. You'll notice different presets here. These allow you to save settings. Well, let's get those settings correct. From the media and quality, I'll make sure to specify that I'm using photo paper. This is a higher quality paper. This will give you a glossier image and dramatically improve the coverage of the ink. You can also take a look at other options. Assigning a border if you needed to, for example. Now, in this particular printer, I'm only printing a single image, so I don't need to worry about paper handling or cover pages. When you're satisfied, you can easily save this as a preset. Let's call this postcard. And I'll click OK. When ready, I can click Print. The image will take a few moments to be processed by your printer. Depending upon the file size and quality, you'll have to wait for the image to transfer and load into the queue. Once it's ready, it will start to print. In this case, I'm using a photo printer that applies multiple passes. It's actually using a series of film to apply the different colors to the paper. Here, it's using a series of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. One benefit of this type of printer is that it's immediately dry. This is due to the dye sublimation type printing, and I don't have to worry about letting the ink actually dry on the page. But I can easily remove the edges here. This type of photo printer has tear-off edges to get it to be borderless. We'll just crack that and remove it. There we are. And now we have a finished picture. Many users decide to let others do the printing for them. This could be because they want to take advantage of higher quality settings or larger format output. Or perhaps you just need several copies and it's easier to let somebody else do it. In any case, you'll find a wide range of printers available online. One thing I recommend is making sure to visit the printer's website. These different companies will often have specific instructions about how they want the files prepared and which file formats they support. What I'm going to share with you now is just some general advice. With an image open, I'd recommend going to File, Page Setup. Here, you can define what type of paper you're printing on. You'll notice that you have several different sizes available, but you can also go to Manage Custom Sizes. Here, you can assign the size based upon the printing company. I'll click Plus and name the output. In this case, Small Canvas. I'm going to print this image to something that is 24 inches by 24 inches, a square-shaped canvas. When ready, I can click OK. Additionally, some printers will have profiles that you can download and load onto your computer. Now, let's click OK to assign it. Now it becomes necessary to crop to that target size. I'll press the crop command and choose a particular aspect ratio. In this case, I'm going to crop to a square. This allows me to freely position the image within the crop, deciding what parts of the photo I want to show. I'm going to use these parts here and click the Apply button. Additionally, feel free to refine the image. In this case, I'm just going to make the blacks a little richer. I'd suggest that you take a look at your histogram panel. You may notice that there are two triangles in the corners. This can help you indicate where an image is clipping. For example, right now, the blacks are starting to clip. This means that there'll be too much ink coverage on the blacks. Let's set that just a little higher. There we go. And I'll lift the shadows slightly. A little bit of clipping is okay, but you want to keep a close eye on what's happening in the image. In this case, lifting the shadows will ensure that only these window areas are pure black and that detail will come through in the wall. Similarly, those blue pixels indicating cold have a companion, red pixels indicating hot. In this case, I'll recover the highlights just slightly. Pulling those down will put detail back into those areas. You can also use the white slider here to recover details. What you're looking for is an area that's clipping. Now the clipping is gone. You can, of course, play with the vibrance and saturation levels as well. Just keep an eye on the overall clipping of the image. I'll put a little smart tone in here, which brings out the contrast nicely, and I'm happy with that. Now, let's save a file ready for printing. I'll choose File, Export. Now, we'll assign it a unique name. I recommend you consider some sharpening. You can apply default sharpening on export or use the sharpening filter which you learned about earlier. Low or medium is usually enough for most printing jobs. Consider if you need to resize. Here, using dimensions, you can do so. But in this case, I'll just assign the short edge. I'm going to print this as a 24-inch canvas. In this case, I need to do a little bit of basic math. I'll bring up my calculator application, and I know that I'm doing a 24-inch print. My printer is going to be printing at 200 pixels per inch. This means I need to set the width to 4,800 pixels. Next, I can assign a color space. Most printers that you work with as a vendor will prefer Adobe RGB, but always check. From file type, I prefer TIFF. However, some printing companies will ask for a JPEG or a PDF file. TIFF is going to be most common, though, for a high-quality image. I recommend no compression, but if you're going to be uploading via the internet, you can choose LZW to get the file size down slightly. Feel free to assign a bit depth. 16 bits will give you more information for printing. And in this case, my printer requested 200 pixels per inch. So there is my correct size. When ready, I can click Save to generate the new file. Once exported, your image is ready for printing. Some printing companies will allow you to upload the image via a website. Others will request that you simply bring it into their shop, using something like a USB drive to make it easy to transport.